I want to discuss how we engage in the conversation regarding Israel, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable vis-a-vis the government and the leadership of the IDF, Israel's military. From October 7th, 2023 on, those of us who've been involved in trying to help the heroes on the front lines, the IDF soldiers, have been repeatedly cautioned that there are certain things that you just can't say about the leadership, and there are certain things that need to be dealt with, quote unquote, within the family, and therefore we have to be very mindful of our speech. In theory, that's great advice, and it's important to be mindful of our speech. The question is that a standard that's being kept throughout the greater Jewish world and within Israel's leaders themselves? Asaf Agmon, Air Force commander and very involved in the Kaplan protests before October 7th. Unfortunately, his grandson fell in a very tragic incident in Lebanon. He posted yesterday, did the praised Air Force pilots know that tonight they became partners of Netanyahu and his corrupt government in the negligence of 59 abducted, probably 24 alive? It's not the same Air Force I devoted most of my life to. The implication being that perhaps these pilots should not have actually flown because he doesn't agree with the way that Israel is going about attacking Hamas. Furthermore, David Horovitz, the founding editor of the Times of Israel, he wrote yesterday with regard to Netanyahu's desire to fire Ronen Bar, the head of the Shin Bet, quote, announcing his intention to fire Shin Bet chief Ronen Bar on Sunday, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu plunged Israel back into the constitutional crisis he created in early 2023 with his bid to neuter the judiciary and to concentrate control of all branches of government in his own hands. So it's not that Benjamin Netanyahu might have legitimate aims for the betterment of the country and the ability to work with the Shin Bet, but he's trying to consolidate power in his own hands. Again, one of the words that was always repeated to me and to others was that we have to be very cautious of our words and how it might affect reservists and the morale of the country. I'm wondering how those two statements go about furthering that aim. And then looking at Haaretz, there's a forum of former senior security officials who decried the firing of Shin Bet director during an emergency press conference yesterday. And the title is, quote, "The state of Israel is in danger." And you have former Shin Bet chief Carmi Gilon, Major General Reserve Noam Tibon, and former head of the police Roni Ashik. Okay, listen, they can have whatever opinion they want. They may be right, they may be wrong, whatever it might be. But the question is there actual limits to what we should or shouldn't say, and how do we go about that discussion? When it came to sending soldiers to the front lines with insufficient equipment or with expired gear, repeatedly, I was personally warned that we have to stay united and that we have to use appropriate language and not instill panic and fear into the public and to not affect the morale of the soldiers. It's clearly not being done in this case. So is there certain speech that is allowed to be said, even if critical of the army or the government, or is everything on the table? And that's something that has to be decided. It can't just be arbitrarily and randomly. It has to be something that is equally agreed upon in a gentleman's promise or understanding. But that concept that it's just a free-for-all and that it's bad and you're not allowed to say something because it involves a very sensitive point, which is that soldiers don't have proper equipment, that's bad. But then when it comes to something that's politically oriented, when it comes to Netanyahu, Ronen Bar resuming the war, therefore it's acceptable. It doesn't make sense. There has to be a consistent standard, and I think that the Jewish community has to push for a consistent standard and determine what's most important, whether that's national unity on a greater scale, and that's what the media is promoting, or whether you're having a deep conversation and trying to draw conclusions. Again, even when soldiers are being sent to the front lines with insufficient equipment, we never touched on the reserve level or encourage people to disobey orders. That would be absurd. But yet that seems to be happening now from people that oppose Netanyahu's government. And I'm left here extremely confused.